Yes, guys, welcome back to the Highbury Lounge. Here is your latest Arsenal transfer news. Of course, we are going to discuss Vinny Jr., Bruno Guimaraes, Christian Norgard set for an exit to a Premier League club. The fee I am not happy about, and Jacobo Ramon, the Como defender. Arsenal looking at him as another centre-back option. If you're new around here, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button, guys, giving you the very latest in Arsenal news. Let's take a quick look at the transfers. As we know, Bruno Guimaraes, Vinny Jr., they are the big deals Arsenal looking to do at the moment. I mentioned Jacobo Ramon. We're still linked with Ezri Konsa. Spoke a little bit about him on the last transfer show. Christian Norgard set to leave the club as well. Let's go on to the one that we all want to talk about. Of course, it's Vinicius Jr., that fee in the region of £160 million. Vinny Jr. due back at Real Madrid this week as well, and will be speaking with the likes of Florentino Perez, I'm led to believe, and Jose Mourinho, not necessarily with the agents at the moment. But of course, I'm sure Vinny Jr. would like to understand just what Jose Mourinho might have in store for him should he remain at the club beyond this season. And look, I want to sit here as an Arsenal fan and say I'm super confident that he's going to do the deal and move to Arsenal. But if it was any other club, maybe not Barcelona or whatever else, then maybe he would. But still, when it's Real Madrid, you just think they're going to find the upper hand and they're going to manage to convince him that his future lies away from North London and still at Real Madrid. We'll have to wait and see with that one. Rock Nation, I want to bring your attention to this as well. They've been speaking over the course of Sunday as well. They issued this statement, which I picked up on X as well, and it says fake news taking the Donald Trump route when it comes to announcing an update. They say Rock Nation Sports International and our entire team cannot stand idle when unprofessional and uninformed media publish fake and damaging information for attention-seeking purposes. This is especially unacceptable when it personally targets our clients without any foundation. It is disruptive, harmful, and libellous. Media outlets and journalists need to hold themselves accountable. What do you guys make of that from Rock Nation? Because I think they've probably been welcoming all of the noise. They might not be able to say it, but I think they've probably been welcoming all of the noise in relation to Vinny Jr. Of course, there will be a lot of it out there that is untrue. We don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. All we can do is report on what we see, try and assess whether we think it's credible or not, and then put it out for discussion with you guys down in the comments, obviously. And I think that they want to get the upper hand over Real Madrid. We know that they've been at, stalemate when it comes to these contract negotiations. You know that there's a big distance when it comes to the fees still to be discussed between the two sides. If you believe some of the reports coming out over the weekend, especially in Marca, I dropped a reel on that on TikTok over the weekend, then Real Madrid won't make any further upgrades. And if he doesn't agree to what's on the table, then he will, of course, be sold this summer. And Arsenal, of course, in pole position to do that. I've seen other reports this weekend, which I think will be true, in relation to Vinny Jr. discussing with fellow Brazilians, past and present, in the Premier League to ascertain, I should say, or assess what it's like to maybe live in London or the UK, play in the Premier League as well. And obviously, Arsenal have got a fair few Brazilians. Rock Nation have Gabriel Martinelli under their belt as well. And I wonder what discussions may go on with him if Vinny Jr. was to move to London as well. You've got Bruno Guimaraes, Newcastle United, set to move to London. Gabriel, and of course, Gabriel Jesus, just some of the Brazilians. There's João Pedro in London at Chelsea. There are so many players that are plying their trade from Brazil over in the Premier League. Cunha up at Manchester United, another one as well. So I'm sure if Vinny Jr. wants to get the down low, so to speak, on playing Premier League football, there are more enough of his international teammates that he's going to be able to talk to in relation to playing football here. Arsenal, we know, are going to make a monster offer if they need to. We know that the deal in place on personal terms is bigger than Arsenal have ever done in their life. This will not just be Arsenal's biggest ever transfer. This will be the biggest transfer in Premier League history. You know, and Arsenal have come a long way and should be making these types of approaches. We've seen a lot of people, a lot of rival fans who are obviously worried at the moment, talking about the fact that, you know, Vinny Jr. is not going to move to Arsenal. He's not going to come to the Premier League. If he was going to come to the Premier League, then it would be to Chelsea or Manchester City. It'd never be to Arsenal. And I asked the question, why, other than jealousy? You know, we're now Premier League champions. We've been knocking at the door for far too long. We've been going deep in the Champions League in recent seasons as well. We are now one of the big hitters when it comes to major teams in the world. You know, players like Vinny Jr. should be interested. I'd be interested to know as well why people think that he's going to be a disruption to the dressing room, or he's got a big ego and things like that. I mean, go back to the Invincible era when we had players like Thierry Henry and Ashley Cole and Patrick Vieira and players like that, Jens Lehmann. These guys were built around ego. Lauren, Sol Campbell, Dennis Bergkamp had an ego. Martin Keown has talked about that before as well. They were winners, absolute winners. And I want to see that at my club. I don't think Vinny Jr. is going to walk into the dressing room and create absolute chaos and havoc that Mikel Arteta can't resolve. We're talking about a top 5 player in world football, you know, who's going to be on a monster amount of money and reset the benchmark probably for the club. In all honesty, Arsenal should want to sign players like Vinny Jr. to make themselves better, in my opinion. You know, yes, it might have repercussions on what it looks like for transfer deals in the future, player wages for certain players in the future as well. I'm sure when negotiation times come around for players like Saliba and Rice and people like that, the wages are going to go up. Arsenal are going to have to box clever in relation to what they do with those types of, you know, players that we deem world class, I suppose. Of course, there are players that we've got to get rid of as well that will offset some of that going forward in the future. Gabriel Jesus is on a monster amount of money, 260 grand a week. He's one of those ones that came in early when Arteta began the rebuild. Arsenal need to get rid of players like him. Kai Havertz, couple of years left on his deal. Don't see Arsenal wanting to offer Kai Havertz that type of money. Not saying he's going to go in this window, but these are all offsets that are probably going to come in the future. Along with that, the spread of players like Nelson and Vieira, those types of players that Arsenal could do without in the squad that add up, you know, each week on the 50, 60 grands that they're probably earning, if not more. So Arsenal, I'm sure, will have a game plan around it, but we should not be saying to ourselves, we don't want Vinny Jr. because he might be an upset or he's coming on too big a wages. The guy is such a good footballer. Look at the stats, 50 appearances, 21 goals, 10 assists for Real Madrid last year. Pay the money if you can. Do I think it's going to get done? I genuinely believe we're at the toss of a coin. I think in the next week, we're really going to understand when he comes back and stuff like that. Are Rock Nation going to try and demand a meeting with Florentino Perez? Probably yes. Probably yes. But I think Perez will probably put a little caveat to that, says there isn't much room, if any, for negotiation. So the bar's already been set by Real Madrid, you know, and I'm sure Rock Nation in the lead up to that have looked at what Arsenal have verbally put forward. I'm sure they've looked at all the image rights because, as we know, in the Premier League, he's entitled to 100% of his image rights. It's very different to that in Spain where it's only 50% as well. If it's all about money, Vinny Jr. will leave Real Madrid tomorrow and come and sign for Arsenal because he will earn far more money at Arsenal. It is not about just money when it comes to Vinny Jr. It is about playing for one of the biggest teams in the world, and he wants to be recognised in a way that I think puts him on parity with the likes of an Mbappe or Jude Bellingham. Now, I tell you what, in 12 months, 18 months, 2 years' time, I'd love Arsenal, if they're going in the same trajectory, to be going back and seeing if we can get the likes of a Jude Bellingham in the 10. Yes, you may call me wild for that, but why not? We're not living in the world anymore at Arsenal where we're playing career mode on FIFA or Championship Manager. I want Arsenal to continue to strive to be the best club in world football. And that means demanding the very best players. And Vinny Jr., like Jude Bellingham, like Kylian Mbappe, is one of the very best in the world. As I said, the Rock Nation tweet, very interesting. Vinny Jr.'s supposedly been talking to Brazilian colleagues that play their football in the Premier League just to suss out what it's like week in, week out, the demands, the living in London as well. As I said, he's got plenty of Arsenal players that he can talk to. And I'm excited to see what happens in the next week. If we don't sign Vinny Jr., where do we go next is Arsenal's biggest problem, because I don't really want Antonio Nusa. I would entertain Marcus Rashford, but no more than 40 million. I genuinely wouldn't. Yan Diamande's going to Real Madrid along with Rodri by the looks of it. Arsenal will probably stuck if they don't sign Vinny Jr. on that left-hand side. If they don't, I'd probably say stick with Martinelli and Zolis. In all honesty, he's had a good start to life at Arsenal. He's played 2 games. He scored 2 goals as well. We got through it last season down that left-hand side with Martinelli and Trossard. Try and do it again with Martinelli and Zolis if we have to, and then maybe go look at Kvaratskhelia next season. Let's go on to Bruno Guimaraes, a man that has almost got the green light to travel now down to North London for his medical. Arsenal and Newcastle expected to agree the final parts of the pay structure around this £75 million deal, which looks to rise to 80 million, subject to Arsenal, of course, probably winning things again like the Premier League or the Champions League and player performance stats as well from Bruno's side. I will add that I'm frustrated about how long this deal has taken to do. Arsenal going through the intermediary route like they've done before. It seems to have dragged on for an eternity. As we found out late last week when Eddie Howe walked away from Newcastle, he's been aware for the last 2 to 3 weeks that Bruno would be sold if the right fee was met. And of course, Arsenal are actually getting very good quality for the money that they're paying. A lot of people talking about the fact that he's 28 years old. I've talked about it before as a question mark more than necessarily a concern when you look at players that have been signed in their early 30s for fees in excess of what is being paid for Bruno Guimaraes. You know, Casemiro is in and around the 70-75 million euro mark. Harry Kane over 100. Yes, bigger players maybe, but Bruno G has still got a lot to offer from a footballing perspective. It's going to be a 5-year deal at Arsenal. Expect when you're watching this on Monday that this deal will be at the medical stage. I expect it to be done. If it's not Tuesday, then it's Wednesday. That will allow Arsenal to start to focus on some other opportunities. And I think he walks straight into this Arsenal team next to Declan Rice, who, by the way, is pushing to start in the Community Shield against Manchester City on August the 16th. Declan Rice is an absolute juggernaut when it comes to football. That is why I want him to be Arsenal captain, guys. Such a leader, determined to be ready to go for the first game of the season when many thought he wouldn't be available. Rice is putting his hand up for that. I want Arteta to manage that. We don't want him to hit burnout in 3-4 months' time, but I am already dreaming about Bruno G and Declan Rice. And I'm honestly saying now, and I've said it for the last few weeks, Miles Lewis-Skelly is ahead of Martin Zubimendi right now. Brilliant game against Girona. And guys, do me a massive favour. I'll plug it again at the end of the show. Match review dropped a little late. I was travelling at the time. As a brand new channel, YouTube's not quite sure what to do with it. Help me out, guys. Go watch that video for me on my match take in Arsenal's 4-1 win over Girona, if you can, for me. Let me know your thoughts to it down in the comments of that one as well. But Arsenal expected to do this deal with Bruno G in the next 72 hours, I think, at the most. And as I said, I'm genuinely excited for that. Who's going to be in the 10? We'll leave that for another video. We're going to talk in depth about this Arsenal squad. It continues to get stronger as we look at it on paper at the moment anyway. Is there anyone that's unhappy about the amount of money we're paying for Bruno G? given that he's 28 years old. Football's moved on. Players can play a lot later now, but I am very, very excited for this one. One player set to leave the club, Christian Norgaard, looks set to go and join Everton. Fees being agreed between the two clubs, 7 million. We paid nearly 12 for him last summer. This, for me, is a deal that just, I don't think Arteta ever wanted the player. We needed that reinforcement when Jorginho left. He played 20 appearances in all competitions, 2 assists. Look, he's been a model pro. You will never hear a bad word said about Christian Norgaard, but the man needs to play football. Will he see his time as a success? I think he'll have a mixed opinion if he's truly honest. Of course, he's won the Premier League. He's been involved in mentorship around some of the younger players as well. And when called upon, he's never let Arsenal down. As I said, I don't think Arteta wanted him. He could have used him far more last season to give Rice, a rest or whatever else. That hasn't happened. And I think there's no point carrying him. The fact that the Bruno G deal looks set to hit that green light in the coming hours, I think now for that medical, then Arsenal happy to shift him on. I am disappointed with the fee, 7 million for a player of good quality. I'd like to have seen that 9 to 10. In all honesty, I don't think he's any worse than when he joined us 12 months ago, maybe a year older. But again, never been the quickest. He's a captain of Brentford, wasn't he? Former Danish international as well. And I wish him nothing but the best. Nothing but the best. And I just feel that sorry for him that he didn't get more of an opportunity in an Arsenal shirt. So he looks set to leave for Everton. We'll go on to this as well, guys. I don't know how many eagle-eyed or eagle-eared listeners picked up on this from Mikel Arteta. In reaction to the Girona game, Victor Gyökeres will be at Arsenal next season. In 4 words, he pretty much says he stays with us in relation to questions around Gyökeres. Arteta was asked about players outside of Arsenal, to which he said he won't discuss any players that are not on Arsenal's books, but he was adamant in his point about Victor Gyökeres. Didn't go into any great detail, but saying that he will be at the club. Remember, scored 14 goals in the Premier League last season, 36 appearances there as well, 20-odd goals in all competitions. Hopefully, that gives Victor Gyökeres a lot more confidence, and maybe the likes of Bruno G, maybe if it's a Vini Jr. down the left, if not Zolis as well, can give this man a lot more to be excited about. I think it would make him stay more central. I think that the Julian Alvarez deal is clearly very difficult to do from an Arsenal perspective. And I think that's why Arteta's probably come out and said that. I think that Alvarez genuinely wants that Barcelona move. Arsenal not willing to maybe entertain playing second fiddle to Julian Alvarez. So they're going to come out and say that Gyökeres stays. Obviously, football can change in the blink of the eye. And if Alvarez becomes an option for Arsenal, then maybe Gyökeres becomes part of that deal. I know there's a lot of Arsenal fans that would say, keep Gyökeres, sell Havertz. I don't think you could have Alvarez and Gyökeres, both of them vying for that number 9, where I think Kai Havertz is more used to being a squad player, can pay 10, or Arteta likes him in the 10 and the 8 as well. So, if Alvarez becomes available, then maybe Gyökeres moves on. But if not, hopefully the full pre-season, a year of being used to the Premier League, that we get an even better Victor Gyökeres than we did last season. I want to go on to a central defender, Jacobo Ramon from Como. Remember, where Fabregas is the manager and doing an amazing job there as well. Como in the Champions League for next season. Arsenal still looking at centre-back options. I wanted John Stones. Without John Stones, I'm willing to let them all go, with the likes of Ben White, Hincapié, Mosquera, Gabriel, all available. Calafiori can play in there as well if needed. Arsenal, I still think, have now got ample coverage if it's not going to be a free transfer. That being said, this one is being linked at the moment. Made 32 appearances last season for Como, 15 clean sheets, just over 2,700 minutes. He is a great age, something that Arsenal like to look at. 35 million for the player as well. I've got Arsenal at medium interest, and that is because the deal is a little difficult to do from an Arsenal perspective, and that is because, a bit like the Nico Paz deal that Como had with Real Madrid own the player pretty much, or 50% of the player. They have got rights to future sales. Como paid 2-3 million euros for him, and you're going to be negotiating with Real Madrid pretty much in order to get him out of Como. I think he's a player that would entertain coming to Arsenal. I genuinely do. Obviously, a Spanish coach as well. Obviously, Fabregas would want to keep him, given they've got Champions League football, given how good he was last season. And we'll take a look at some of those stats as well, guys. You know, 6'5" at 21 years old. These are very, very good stats and something I'm sure Arsenal and the coaching staff would love to work with. He's probably a player that would accept more of a squad role at Arsenal as long as it didn't interfere with his development. I just think, again, at 35 million euros, do we right now need to be spending that type of money? We're still linked with Ezri Konsa, who in the cold light of day is not going to come to Arsenal. Not going to come to Arsenal. 65 million, I certainly don't want to spend. I don't rate him as a player. Yes, he's versatile right back and right centre back. But as soon as Timber and Saliba are fit, then of course he is going to be sitting on the bench. And why is he going to do that at 28 years old when he played week in, week out at Aston Villa? Let me know your thoughts to that one. Make sure you're dropping a like on this video, guys, as well for me. If we sold the likes of a Ben White, 30 odd million, then I'd go all out and go and try and get a Jacobo Ramon. I genuinely would go and try and do that. Or maybe a Fresneda, who I talked about in the last transfer show. The right age, the right profile, not going to bust the wages. Arsenal are going to be able to get those types of players out of those clubs for less than 50 million euros is where I would go if I was Arsenal. Guys, do me a huge favour. Make sure you are following the Highbury Lounge. This has been your latest Arsenal transfer news, not just on YouTube. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram and Facebook as well, talking all things Arsenal for the love of Arsenal. And of course, I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Cheers, guys.